There's a lot we can learn about evangelism from St. Patrick. That's what we're talking about today on the Church Revitalization Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast, brought to you by the Malphurs Group team, where each week we tackle important, actionable topics to help churches thrive. And now, here's your hosts, Scott Ball and AJ Matthew.
Welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast. My name is Scott Ball. I'm joined by my friend and co-host, AJ Matthew. And AJ, I know that we did an episode last year on St. Patrick's Day, but about St. Patrick, and some people may be remembering that, but we want to bring him up again because I believe he's an historical figure that deserves remembrance on his special day. And so we're talking about St. Patrick. I do want to give kind of maybe the 30,000 foot overview on the impact of his ministry. If you want kind of a more detailed, or it's not super detailed, but maybe a deeper reflection on his biography, you can go back to last year's episode on Patrick at malphursgroup.com/81 and read his story. But, and also highly would commend the book, The Celtic Way of Evangelism by George G. Hunter III. It has a cooler looking cover. If you're watching on YouTube, the cover on it looks cooler now. This one looks kind of dorky. It's a great book, and it's not long, AJ. I think it's only like 120 pages.
I love how you slipped in the AJ in there because you're like, you don't like to read long books, so maybe this one will be.
I was saying it for you and dear listener. It's not a big.
It does look like a manageable book for the old AJ. Yes.
Yeah, it's not a big book. So AJ, you and I were talking about Patrick before we hit record here.
Yeah.
And I think it's taken a couple years, but I think I'm kind of winning you over on becoming a Patrick fan.
I am starting to become a Patrick fan, and maybe 2 years in a row. If we do it next year, then that's officially a tradition, which that's our little tip of the hat to the Catholic Church. We're gonna do the same thing at the same time every year. But yeah, I'm starting to dig old St. Patrick. I think he was following the apostles well. How about that? A few hundred years removed. He apparently read the Bible and was like, there's some ideas here that I could maybe bring back.
Yeah, he did. And so actually, I'm going to pull up his confessions. He has a book that you can read it online. You can just Google the confession or confessions of St. Patrick, and you can read it. So okay, so let me kind of lay some groundwork here, AJ, on Patrick, and then how I can connect this to third places in our society and what that means. So Patrick lived in a society, though, it's just kind of right after the end of the collapse of the Roman Empire, and so there's no concept for planting churches in this time outside of conquest. Rome would conquer an area and then they'd build a church there. And if you lived near a town or city and you could go to that church, then you could be Christian. But if you lived outside the boundaries of what was considered civilization, then it was thought that not only should there not be a church there, but also these people were incapable of accepting Christ, that it wasn't possible for them to become Christians. This was the thought process. Which is astounding that this was a thought, but it was. This is what they thought. So when they thought about the Irish, so the Roman Empire ends in England. That's the kind of the upper reaches of the Roman Empire. And so then when you start talking about Ireland, this is now outside of the Roman Empire. And now that the Roman Empire has collapsed, there's no sense of what to do about reaching these folks. Actually, there's not even a feeling that they should be reached. There's no missionary instinct in the church at this point, except where we see it in Patrick. And so this is Patrick's response to what I guess the attitude, this anti-evangelistic attitude. And he says that he believes that believing people will come from all over the world. These are his words. He says, it is right that we should fish well and diligently, as the Lord directs and teaches when he says, follow me and I will make you fishers of men. And again, he says through the prophets, behold, I send many fishers and hunters, says God, and other such sayings. Therefore, it is very right that we should cast our nets so that a great multitude and crowd will be taken for God. Also, that there should be clerics to baptize and encourage a people in need and want. This is what the Lord says when in the gospel. He warns and teaches in these words. Go, therefore, and teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I'm with you all days, even to the end of the age. Again, he says, go, therefore, to the whole world and announce the gospel to every creature. Whoever believes and is baptized will be saved. Whoever does not believe will be condemned. And yet again, this gospel of the kingdom will be announced all over the world as testimony to all the nations, and then will come the end. In the same way, the Lord foretold this through the prophet, as he said, and it will come about in the last days, says the Lord, that I will pour out my spirit on all flesh, and your sons and your daughters will prophesy. Your young people will see visions. Your older people will dream dreams. Indeed, on my servants, men and women, I will pour out my spirit and they will prophesy. Hosea says, those who were not my people, I will call my people. And her who has not obtained mercy, I will name the one who has obtained mercy. In the place where it was said, you are not my people, there they will be called children of the living God. So I just want to say he could have been a Baptist preacher. He could have been a total evangelical. Does this not sound right?
That was an amazing collection of gospel passages to weave together. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's amazing. So when you think about Patrick, I really don't. This is why I'm so passionate about this, guys. I don't want you to think about Patrick about leprechauns and four-leaf clovers and green beer and all the nonsense. Like, I want you to understand the missionary heart that this man had. And so just to briefly kind of give you the highlights of his ministry, as a result of his ministry, 700 or more churches were planted. 1,000 or more priests were ordained. 27% of Ireland's tribes became substantially Christian in his own lifetime. And prior to him, 0 were Christian. He was the first public figure to speak out against slavery, and the Irish slave trade ended within his lifetime. And there was a significant decrease in murder and intertribal wars as a result of his mission work. And within one full generation, so not in his lifetime, because he was 48 when he started his missionary work. Just keep that in mind. So for those of you who are like, I don't know what my call is, and maybe you're getting, you past middle age or into middle age, and you're thinking God's done with me. No, Patrick's 48 when he starts his ministry in Ireland. But within a full generation, Ireland became a predominantly Christian nation. So I say all that, and why does this matter to us? Then I feel like there's this sense, AJ, that our culture is lost. Like, it's a lost cause mindset. It's post-Christian. People are jaded. No one wants to hear the gospel. No one wants to engage with the church anymore. And if you cannot look at Patrick's ministry and what the Lord was able to do through Patrick and his team, that's the other thing. He was really team-based. What the Lord did through Patrick and his team within a generation, it puts the Great Awakening to shame. I mean, it's incomparable.
Yeah, really is astounding. I mean, and worthy of celebration. People, modernly now we celebrate St. Patrick's Day for no apparent reason. But you know what? I mean, as the church, we should be celebrating the expansion of the kingdom and innovation of evangelistic technique, and just amazing stuff. I mean, this is a whole new spin on St. Patrick's Day, and I think we should really lean into that, not only for what's worthy of celebration, but for what's worthy of looking at in how we might be able to further our work as well, for modeling.
Right. So I guess one principle that I want to kind of share, and then we'll dive into the practical things that you could do to begin to have a ministry like Patrick. So Patrick was heavily influenced by the monastic movement, this idea of creating a community, not just having a church in a city, but having a community where life happened, where there was a mill, and where there was, you're growing crops, and where there's education, and where people were employed, and there's all of these kind of, it's almost its own city, miniature city community with life on life stuff happening, and men and women engaged, and the laity really being engaged, and so on. And so one of the things that Patrick did that was different is that instead of thinking of monasteries as an escape from the world, he began to essentially build a monastic movement within tribes and communities themselves. So instead of building it away from, he would build it within. So, and this was revolutionary and very different. And I guess what I would call to our attention is that I don't know that any church, AJ, would think of itself as a monastery for the most part, probably especially not the ones listening to us. But for how many of us is that not the functional reality? We think of Sunday as an escape from the world. We have this 1 hour escape from the world on Sunday morning and Wednesday night. And then the rest of the week, our buildings, for the most part, lie dormant unless we can cajole the same Sunday, Wednesday crowd to come back for something else to escape from society. Right. And we take great pride in how big of a facility can we build that seats people during this escapism that happens, an hour on Sunday mornings, rather than thinking of building a community within our community, building a monastery, building a resource that can be utilized by the community. I think one of the greatest ironies that I've seen is the number of churches I've worked with that have something that they call like the Christian Life Center or the Community Life Center, but it's really just a glorified fellowship hall that still gets used by the same Sunday, Wednesday set of folks. And it's not really, there's not life happening there. It's not a resource for the community usually. And that's sad. And so Patrick understood this concept of third place, this idea of people's first primary space is home. Their second might be their work, but there are other needs beyond that, social needs, other kinds of psychological and sociological needs that people have. And he created a community where people could engage in that even further. And so the church used to be that, AJ, just by default, because it was a hub for the community. People would host town meetings in churches. People would host community organizations, would meet in churches. So this is something that used to be a part of American society, but in the secularization of society, that's become less and less true. And so if you want to make an impact in the community, you need to rethink your facility and begin to think like Patrick. How can we create a community within the community, something that's necessary and needed, that people would engage with the church in ways other than showing up on a Sunday morning? So that was an extremely long introduction, but really that's the introduction in my mind is the main point. Certainly I want to give you some examples of things you could do, but this is the concept I really want people to grab, AJ, this idea of not thinking of the church as an escape from the world, but thinking of even your facility as a way to engage the world.
Yeah. And at first, I think whenever we were first even talking about this off air, I was thinking, well, the times are so different. The time of Patrick is more community oriented, tribal, village based. People were together more already. Certainly was lower density population. Sure. And so, I was already thinking in the back of my mind, I don't know, do we have even as much opportunity now as he did then? And the more I think about it, I think we probably have more opportunity now than he did then, but we do have to be creative. I mean, but I'll bet a team of innovative people could probably come up with a fairly lengthy list of ideas in which the building or the grounds could be used to help people, to draw them into something that would engage them. And we're going to get into just a few of them, a couple of ideas here in just a moment. But I don't know. I'm starting to think maybe we have more opportunity now for this than Patrick even had in his day.
Yeah, I mean, people are more isolated now than they've ever been, and so they're longing for that connection. They don't have that anywhere else, especially coming out of the pandemic. People are lonely, and we don't even have civic organizations like we did, or the engagement in them has significantly decreased. Like, when's the last time you knew someone who was a part of like the local Rotary Club or something? Like, it's just not something that people do who are sub 65. So there's a need for this. So, but you're going to have to meet a need, because I think that people are not consciously aware of how lonely they are or how much of a need they have for that connection in that community. So you're going to have to do some things to create a space that meets a need that is felt. So that's the kind of maybe the first principle, even though we're going to give some concrete ideas here. These may not work in your community because they may not meet an actual need. I think that's maybe a mistake that a lot of churches make when it comes to evangelism outreach, is they just, they start a food pantry, but no one in their community is hungry. So that's not meeting a felt need in their specific community. So you got to figure out what's the need, and then build that monastery in the community, meet that need. So AJ, what are I've got a couple ideas here. Where do you want to start?
Let's just start with the first one on the list. We'll just talk about it, and if we come up with more ideas along the way, we'll throw those in too. But
okay.
Yeah. So the first thing that you listed here, Scott, is an indoor kids playground. And so a lot of people are probably like, oh, come on. Maybe your church has that and it's used on Sunday mornings for the littles. But it could be something that's used on more than just Sundays. I mean, if, giving moms or dads a place to gather where kids can safely play. There certainly are a lot of communities that don't have safe kid play spaces.
No.
And then, places for the adults to maybe engage with one another as well, while the kids are being entertained or doing something. But this could also be coupled along with, childcare for, which is probably an even greater need. Of course, a lot of churches end up doing preschools and things like that. But this is definitely something that could be leveraged beyond Sunday.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to a church that I worked with in Indiana. They are outside. They're sort of outside the anywhere. They're not close to a Chick-fil-A. They're not close to even a McDonald's that has a play area. There's nowhere that they can go to. North Webster Church of God. So they built this. Their church is right across the street from the public library. So, I mean, public library is a resource for families, but they're right across the street there. And they built a children's facility rather than building a new sanctuary. This was an intentional thing that they did. They decided to even wait on renovating their existing sanctuary, which needed renovation. They didn't build a new one. The instinct is, we need to build a new sanctuary. They chose not to do that. Instead, they chose to build a children's facility with a large kids indoor playground, because there's no resource like that. And in North Webster, Indiana, where they're at, it snows. So people go stir crazy, and parents need a place to let their kids run and play and be kids. And so they built this large indoor playground, and it gets used all the time. When I was down there doing some work with them, I was amazed at the number of families that were in there playing, and moms were meeting, and they have a coffee shop in there, so the moms can grab a coffee. They had originally hoped that maybe some meetings and things like that, like maybe business people would use the coffee shop and so on, but coffee shop's right next to the kids play area. So it's not the best place to have a business meeting because it's loud. But it's beautiful because there's kids. It's just like someone kicked over an ant pile and a whole bunch of kids popped out. It's like, it's fantastic. So they understood their community. There's a need here that's not being met by Chick-fil-A or some other place that has a place for kids to kind of run around and be kids and play. And they built that thing. And it's helping them grow, but it's more than that, helping them to make a gospel impact in their community.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, I mean, and so 1A on this is also the coffee shop space, the meeting space. I really love. I attend a large multi-site, and our main campus has a coffee shop that's open, to the public. I think pretty much every day of the week. It's not super close to me, so it's not something I can use. I wish my campus had it, because that'd be something that I would want to use and have meetings at and hang out. So I think that's a cool thing too. All right, our second one though, and it's kind of similar, and that's a co-working space. So again, a great way to multi-utilize, building fellowship hall space or classroom space or anything else, is to have it where people can work there during the day. If you're in a city that has a good internet backbone connection, you can provide high-speed internet and some other tech, then a place for people, again, to have meetings or to do Zoom calls and things like that. That's great. We certainly, the pandemic forced everybody away from their offices, and a lot of organizations are not going back to the office. They're remaining, working from home or something. And there's people that don't want to work at home, or it's just not practical for them. They don't have the space for it at home, or the internet or tech. So yeah, I think co-working is really cool, and a great way also for, people to network and partner together on various things, get to know others. So
yeah. So this idea in my mind came from the fact the number of churches that you and I go to, AJ, that, they used to be a church of 1,000 people, and they built all of this classroom space back when the church was 1,000 people. And so now they only need like 2 classrooms, but they've got 20, and so it starts to fall into disrepair. The ceiling tiles get stained and gross, and makes the whole building smell. And it's a real tragedy, because there's a lot of space that the church has that isn't getting used. And so a lot of times churches are just thinking, wow, we got to get our attendance up just so we can get those classrooms used again on Sunday morning. And that's, again, going to the other side of monastery thinking, where we could go, we need to get more people in here who will escape from society for an hour on Sunday. Instead, think about how could you completely leverage that space in a new way, so that it's getting used, 5 days a week, 6 days a week, 7 days a week. And it's blessing the community. And you mentioned maybe your community has has the technology infrastructure to be able to deliver a good connection. Maybe it might be even more important to build something like that if your community doesn't have a good internet connection. If your church can manage to get a better internet connection than the average person is able to get at their home, then all those people who have been telecommuting would love to work in a co-working space where they can get a better, faster internet connection. So, house nonprofits there who are looking for a place, and let them collaborate together and work together and host things. So you can create a real community hub there by allowing people to come and use your space. There are a lot of churches that could do this, and they could do it pretty quickly. Because the nice thing about co-working space, AJ, is that it's like you can convert classrooms to working space pretty quickly, pretty easily, without a lot of demolition. But maybe change out the moldy carpet.
A little lipstick on that classroom pig maybe will go a long way without having to do any major reconstruction. Yeah,
for sure. Okay, one last idea, AJ, and it's this idea of maybe building a community resource center. So what does that mean exactly? I was working with a church recently in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and they have a vision for creating a community outreach center where they can host after school programs and these kinds of things, because they live in a a community that's economically depressed, and so there's already boys and girls clubs and things like that that meet a lot of that need, but they want to be able to fill in the gaps that other organizations can't. Also, there are a lot of nonprofits that work in the area, that are active in the area, but don't have office space, that need it. So they want to be able to be like we were talking about with the co-working space, but allow these local nonprofits that are doing work in the community, give them a home. They also have a very cool ministry that they're running already. Once a month, they go to a laundromat, AJ, and they pay for everybody's laundry. And so it's a way for them to build connections with folks there, and they become very popular at the laundromat. So they have this vision.
Do they mix it up a little bit, or is like everybody knows, go on the 14th, it'll be free?
No, it's the same. It's the same week every month.
Wow.
Or same day every month. So they have this vision, this dream of opening up a laundry facility in the building that's free to use, because that would meet a need. People maybe you'd have to manage the logistics, people signing up and so on, but allow folks to use laundry facilities, and that would really meet a need and start building some relationships. So they have a vision of, to me, this really is a lot like what Patrick was doing, kind of creating these educational resources and life resources and things. They're already really active in a food pantry and another ministry called Tabitha's Table, where they're helping to feed. So they can give a home to those things. So they're already doing a lot of these kinds of ministries, but they're kind of fractured and all over the place. And they really want to pull it together and give these things a home in their community. And they are right in the middle of a neighborhood that needs a lot of help. And so they have a vision for transforming that community and changing the reputation of that community as being a place that people love to live. So I think it's an amazing vision, and I think it's an incredible opportunity that they have. And so you could be praying for them. You could be praying for that church in Oak Ridge, that God would continue to give them the resources and things that they need to be able to do that. But maybe you live in an area like that. Maybe your church is in a rough area, and maybe you've been thinking, wow, we need to escape this community. We need to go and build a new facility somewhere that's a little less economically depressed. Well, maybe God has placed you where you are for a reason, and you should start thinking about your facility in a new way, and become a place that can bless and transform your community. If Patrick can go to the barbarians in Ireland on purpose and and within a generation, see Ireland transformed, God can use you to transform your rough neighborhood. It's absolutely possible. It's really only a question of, do you want to do it?
Yeah. Amen. Go after your own barbarians. Whatever your barbarians are, you can make a difference. I hope this has given you a reason to celebrate St. Patrick's Day with a different point of view this year, because his work is worthy of celebration, and his revival of gospel ideas right out of Scripture are worthy of celebration, and our work and attention and innovation and effort. So I
can't wait to meet him one day.
Take that and run with it. This has been episode 131 of the Church Revitalization Podcast. So you can read Scott's article this week at malfersgroup.com/131, and we'll be back with you next week.